Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
All right, welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez with you. Joining us also, Stat Boy Drew himself, Drew Glukov in the house to talk about. So we're going to try and make the UCF Athletics Board of Trustees presentation as exciting as humanly possible because, my goodness, yeah,
it was long.
It was a long morning. I'm not going to lie, but there's a lot to talk about there, and I'm glad we delayed the show by a day, fellas, because we went from like having no news to having a bunch of news to talk about. The athletic season is officially underway. Women's soccer kicking the tar out of Texas. Horns down, man. We'll talk about that. And we also have our volleyball preview. Head coach Todd Dagenais joining us in the show to talk about his team getting ready to begin their quest for a fourth consecutive conference championship via volleyball. So lots to talk about. But first, let's talk about the Terry Mohajir's meeting with the Board of Trustees. It was delayed by a week. Here's what the first thing, let's get it out of the way. What didn't happen was there was no vote at all on the stadium naming rights.
It didn't even come up at all.
Didn't even come up at all. Not even in the question and answer session. I don't know what you guys have been hearing, but I'm still hearing, just wait, just hang tight. All right. Drew, you were getting in fights with people, including me, on Twitter today about the handling of it. I don't think there's anything to really handle at this point, but either way,
what's done is done.
Yeah, we're going to put that on the back burner for now. The Hula Bowl is coming to UCF. That's made official. By the way, this year, this January 2022, with an option for 2 more years. So since the Hula Bowl is not in Hawaii because they're renovating, or I don't know if they're renovating,
they're
rebuilding, knocking down and
rebuilding
Aloha Stadium. Yeah. That's why they're doing that. So the 407 to 808 connection wins once again. But the most important thing that Terry Mohajir spoke about today with the Board of Trustees is the new facilities plans that he's been working on in his first 6 months here. And boy, do we have some changes to talk about. It all wrapped up under the umbrella of the football campus is what they're calling it. Basically a 3-phase project. Phase 1 is the recovery cove, and what we're calling the recovery river, is being moved. Remember, it was kind of on the southeastern corner of the bounce house. Now it's being moved basically to right in front of the new athletics administration building, the new Roth Athletic Center. They're going to expand the parking lot that goes parallel to the Wayne Dench Center. And so it's kind of like going to be all in this one area. And I think there's actually one practice football field that's in that spot right now. They're going to build another one on the other side of the second field from that. And that's going to be phase 1. Phase 2 is going to be the addition on the south end of the stadium of what they call the Launch Club. Basically, it's going to be this huge building where they're going to have they're connected to the stadium. They're going to put in loge seats. The football coaches' offices are going to be there, kind of like how they have it in other places where they kind of look over the stadium and then look over the practice fields. That the coaches' offices are going to be there, and that's going to be another additional revenue center for ticket sales for UCF. And then they're also going to put standing room only areas, wings on either side of the big scoreboard on the north side of the stadium. How much that's going to expand the capacity of the stadium, I'm not 100% sure, but that's supposed to be additional student seating that'll be standing room only. And then the third phase is going to be a renovation of the Wayne Dench Center. The weight room is going to be where they had the large weight room. We're going to see a bunch of different things happen. That's going to be, instead of having coaches' offices there, they're going to knock the coaches out of there, which is where the football coaches are right now. And it's going to be all students. So you're not going to see any, it's going to be an all student area. So you're not going to see any coaches areas, coaches offices in that specific area. They're also going to do a couple little detail things like knocking down some of the drywall and replacing it with glass that you can see. It's supposed to look really nice. It's a cool building that they can work on there, but that's sort of the 3-phase project. So, wow. A lot to talk about here. Mohajir was asked about the price tag for this. He was a little, I don't want to say cagey about it, but kind of sheepishly dodged the question a little bit, but did drop a number that he said he was thinking about approximately $50 million. That's it. That's not a hard number, but that is a lot of money. But, like you said, we know UCF is actually in a pretty good spot financially right now. UCF Athletics is. You're talking about a department that finished in the black, thanks to, as Terry Mohajir himself said, thanks to old Rocky Top. The goal, what he did say was his goal. There were 2 key goals, financial goals, and Drew, you're pretty good at figuring this kind of stuff out. Currently, the athletic budget is in the neighborhood of about $70 to $75 million. Mohajir said his eventual long-term goal is to get that budget up to $100 million. How does he plan on doing that? Well, several avenues, but most of all, he wants to get the number of total donors to UCF Athletics to 10,000. Currently, it's more than 8,100.
If I'm correct, that was just a charge on fund.
I thought it was the total number of donors. I have to go back and double check.
I thought that was specific to the charge on fund.
Anyway, the job and grad school placement is 100% among UCF athletes, student athletes, and 27 straight semesters with a departmental GPA of 3.0 or above.
And you got applauses for those.
Yes, as one should, because that's really the primary job of an athletic department is to
and that
graduate.
Was the only thing he got applauded for was that moment when he talked about how the academics are just kicking butt and taking names,
which is good. It's always good. So, what do we think here, Drew? This was quite the presentation. Boy, Terry's a great salesman. I'll tell you. Oh my gosh. Man, I was ready to jump through the television screen, man. It was a lot of fun. Like afterwards, you kind of have to okay, wait a second. Let's analyze this. What are we really thinking about? But this is a pretty ambitious post-COVID plan.
That's an understatement. This is incredibly ambitious. In fact, if you take all the projects put together that he has planned, he talked about the price tag being towards $130 million. But I mean, here's the truth. This is a very long-term thing. This is definitely not a sprint.
Yeah, this is not going up tomorrow.
No, in fact, it could be 10 years before we really see a lot of results. The first phase is going to obviously be the most likely and the most practical. The recovery Cove, recovery river, whatever you want to call it, whatever name is going to be called.
The recovery river. They don't want to call it the lazy river. They want to call it the recovery river.
Because they were talking about cold ponds and stuff instead of just icing down. They wanted it right next to the practice facility so that they can go right out and jump in and go in. They're going to have training staff affiliated with it to handle it. So I mean, they're actually looking at it from a very practical standpoint. But from what I understand, that's already paid for. That's paid with private money, largely through the McNamara family.
Right. So what was new to that was where they were putting it.
Right. And I think it's better where it's at. I think this new idea of moving the practice field, obviously you got to dig up and you got to do the plumbing for that. And so you get the drainage all set up and the parking lot there, because as Terry said, that's been used kind of like a front door for lack of better term, for the stadium. And it looks terrible. And it's not very functional. So
I used to park there when I worked. It was just a parking lot. Basically, it was just a slab of asphalt that was a park for staff, and the TV truck go there too.
Exactly. And so they're planning on expanding at least twice as wide. And you can have they show that they plan on having tailgating there, so they could probably get premium tailgating. Someone's willing to cough up a few coins to have a close spot. Basically, he said except for phase 3, every one of these opportunities has a way of making money. So phase 3, obviously being the gutting and redoing of the Wayne Dent Center, which requires the coaches' boxes to already be moved, their offices to be moved to the stadium expansion with the launch club. But they showed the floor plan of the Wayne Dent. Man, that is a convoluted mess right now with the offices all over the place.
Yeah.
Just an absolute mess. But one of the things he did, and I got to give Terry a lot of credit. He knows how to work a room. He used a lot of references to some of the big schools, Ohio State, Alabama, Florida, Texas. But the stuff he was kind of highlighting were things like the presentation room, the weight room, stuff that you really can only do so much with. So yeah, it's easy to get up to the level of those top big schools because there's only so much you can do. It's not like you're talking about the stadium being on par with an Ohio Stadium or a Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa,
which it won't be, and it never was designed to be.
It was never meant to be.
Right.
The UCF's stadium, the Bounce House, is actually based on the Florida State model, which was built steel-based first and then was improved around.
Mm-hmm.
So
everyone, I'm glad you brought that up, by the way, because everyone who criticizes the Bounce House forgets that Doak Campbell Stadium is basically built the same way, aside from the main grandstands on the sides, which are as old as the hills. Everything else that you see around, basically 50% of that stadium is that
steel.
The derogatory term for it is erector set.
It's a steel stadium.
Yeah.
It's not like Florida Field, which is concrete based. I would love to see, UCF be able to build a concrete stadium, but I mean, it becomes a question of affordability. So he really did a great job of selling the room by using key terms, energy, and talking about these big schools. I think it's a very ambitious plan. It's going to be a long time. And the reality is we shouldn't get our hopes up that it's going to happen anytime soon. I'm not trying to be negative about it. I'm just trying to be realistic. UCF can't afford a $50 million price tag. And obviously that price is going to go up as costs change and everything. So it's going to be more than that. Mm-hmm. But control the things you can control. Phase 1. I think phase 1 is really doable and can probably be done next 5 years. And if not less, because half that money's already raised. Yeah, it's once you get into phase 2 with the stadium expansion of the launch club and those 2 slats that are going to be for student overflow with the standing room area, plus the extra bleachers up there. I'll be honest, I wish they would focus on the seats they already have first and make those a little nicer. But I mean, beggars can't be choosers. I think he did a great job. He brings so much energy. And in fact, I don't know which trustee it was, but one of them commented about how animated he was. And I think that's so cool that UCF has a guy who can just inspire. And that's what you need in a leader. You need someone who inspires. And he did an outstanding job. Like Eric, what do you think about this grand plan? I know we talked about it before the show. And you weren't quite as excited as we were.
Listen, all I'm saying, you said it's going to be long term. There's a reason why UCF does stand for under construction forever. All right. All right. I mean, what else is new? Everybody that's gone on campus at one point in their lifetime, I know I did when I walked in, there's always some sort of construction. So what's the difference here? We'll probably be in construction. However, I think you make a good point, Drew, though. It is long term. But let's be real. This is about possibility of the future of the athletic department and realignment, expansion. That all comes into play here. And I think that's not an accident. He mentioned the bigger programs. You want to make sure you're in position, because that's why these things happen. They don't do it because, hey, we want the student experience to be great. Of course they do, but that's lip service. The real reason they're doing this is, hey, if the ACC has a spot for us, we're ready, and here's what we could show you from a facility standpoint. And I think that's the big picture here. So I agree with you. I don't think this is something they want. I mean, obviously, yes, ideally they would like this to be done as soon as possible, Drew. But I think the next decade with all this, I think there's going to be a lot of kind of wackiness going on in college athletics as it changes. And I think if you're UCF, you want to show whoever that, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're about, and we're the future, right? Hasn't that been the motto? We're the future of college football. We're the future of college athletics. And I think it's not an accident that this proposal was proposed to, a couple of weeks after all the Texas and Oklahoma movement.
And they did ask him about that too. I'm sorry, Drew. They did ask him about that too, and I think that he's, Terry said exactly what he, all he can say, which is, hey, look, we're prepared, we're ready, whatever happens, right? That's the thing that is kind of in the backs of everybody's mind is what's going to happen now with this realignment. Are we heading for another? Is UCF going to be, in the eye of the hurricane again? So go ahead, Drew. I'm sorry.
I would say, I don't know about you guys, but I'm really excited about the Hula Bowl. I mean, I think that's like sweet.
I think it's really cool. I love the fact that we're actually, it used to be that, George O'Leary back in the day, he did not want anybody but his team using.
Get me to keep the grass away from the field.
Yeah. Yeah.
God, you sound more. You don't sound like George O'Leary at all.
I haven't had to do it in a while. Yeah, he's not been.
But
yeah.
But I will
like a
say
different
though,
New Yorker.
Yeah, but I will say though. I mean, it's when Danny White came around, the Apollos were here briefly. Of course, we know that didn't exactly work out according to plan. But it was. There were numerous proposals to have the Cure Bowl actually played, or what became the Cure Bowl played at the stadium. That never materialized. But now I do think that it is part and parcel of what Terry Mohajir was saying, and I think that this goes to Eric. What you're saying is the athletic department of the future needs to be lean and mean, and in that respect, you need to make everything that you do, or at least most of everything that you do, be a center of revenue as well. Right. So you talk about the Recovery River, you need to be able to sell tailgate licenses to that as well. When you talk about the coach's office loge boxes, you need to be able to sell that as an additional club for season ticket holders. So I think that's another aspect of it. There is the fact that, you have to try and everything that you build produce money, not just use it.
Well, that's my question with you, both of you here. I mean, is there a magic number from an attendance standpoint or whatever that the Hula Bowl has to hit for this to stick around? Because there's a part of me that feels like this is kind of a temporary thing. It kind of reminds me when the Pro Bowl was in Orlando. And then once the NFL had Los Angeles ready to go, they moved that Pro Bowl 2 seconds. Is there a number that the Hula Bowl has to hit for this to be a long-term thing here? Because I will point out, one of the issues that the Hula Bowl is going to have from an attendance standpoint, that day is the day of the NFL playoffs. But
it was always like that.
Correct, and that's why not a lot of people showed up to it. So
it was also in, you're comparing a game that was in Hawaii, which is not going to have attendance to begin with,
right? Versus
Florida, Orlando in January. That's very accessible.
But will it draw? I mean, what does it have to draw? I mean, that's the better question. That's the more accurate. Does it have to draw?
I don't think the intention of that event is to draw.
It's not.
I mean, it's not. Okay. It's designed for scouts. It's designed now in the process. You're still putting UCF's name out there, and also the sponsors are getting a little bit extra because remember the Hula Bowl people are not going to cover up the signage. It's additional exposure for UCF for a 3-year period. I happen to think, it's called the Hula Bowl, guys. Like, I think it's going to eventually go back to Hawaii once the new Aloha Stadium is complete. But in that intervening time for 3 years, perhaps UCF gets a little bit of exposure. If they do a very nice job with it, there could probably be another opportunity for another college football all-star game that could come down the pike. Maybe another one. What's the one in Birmingham? No, that's the Senior Bowl. I'm sorry. They're going to keep that one there.
You're thinking of Mobile.
Well, Mobile. Maybe that one moves down here or something like that.
Or does this open opportunity to revisit? You mentioned there were talks that the Cure Bowl would be played there. Didn't happen. Could that be revisited? Could there be another bowl game in the mix? I mean, you've seen more and more.
What their contract is with the Citrus Bowl. I know they did play it the 1 year at the soccer stadium.
I don't think the Cure Bowl. Remember, the Cure Bowl was originally contracted to play at the Bounce House before they got hit with the 3-year moratorium on new bowl games, which kept the Cure Bowl from happening. By the time the moratorium ended, there was no more deal in place. So, I mean, could it come around? Yeah, but this is like an apples and oranges thing. The better comparison is the East-West Shrine Bowl at Tropicana Field.
Yes, thank you. That was the one I was thinking about.
I had the privilege. It was definitely a privilege for 5 out of the last 6 years to be able to cover, and turnout was in a few thousands. It's not the 10,000 plus like they're talking about for the Hula Bowl, but you have exposure. Mohajir talked about using the hotel on campus, which I'm sure the school gets a piece of. They're talking about, financial guarantees. So there's a value to it. I mean, I think I don't remember exactly what the attendance was the last time I was there. There may have been close to 10,000 at the last East-West Shrine game that I was at. Unfortunately, the last year's, the 2021 was canceled due to COVID, and now they've moved to Las Vegas, and that's where the East-West Shrine Bowl will be now. But with them gone, there's a hole in Florida, and Florida in winter is an excellent time to have an all-star game. And I'll tell you, the football experience from just going to a game, comparing Tropicana Field versus the Bounce House. I would take the Bounce House 11 out of 10 times versus Tropicana Field for a football game. It is awful. It is an awful place to watch a football game versus a stadium that's actually, built.
It's almost like it was built. It was almost like that stadium was built not to have a football game. And it was almost like it was built to, I don't know, have baseball or something else.
Yeah. Shocking. I mean, now granted, I've been to a baseball stadium that was also built with football in mind, and it was really cool. It had 2 press boxes. It had the one where home plate was, and then it had another one where the 50-yard line.
Which one was that?
That was the stadium in Hoover, Alabama.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Where the SEC would have their baseball tournament. And I mean, that was just a cool design, but Major League Baseball wasn't going to do that. But that's neither here nor there. But you can use that as kind of an idea of what kind of attendance you're going to get. And you're going to get concessions, and you're going to get, people out there, but you're not going to sell the place out. This is about your name being out there, your exposure being out there, and the fact that everyone is flocking to Orlando to scout and cover this game. Because, it's future NFL stars. People are going to come to Orlando to scout and cover the game. There's value in that.
Do you guys remember what was the college all-star game that was happening where it was one team was guys from Florida schools and the other guys from Florida?
Oh, it was the Gridiron Classic, like Florida versus the world. And they only lasted maybe 2-3 years. It wasn't very long. The Hula Bowl's been around a long time. The Senior Bowl's been around a long time. The Shrine Bowl's been around a long time. You had the Blue-Gray Classic, which unfortunately has gone away.
Yeah.
So there was a bunch of them, but there's only a few that are still surviving. They're not cheap to put on. But I love Terry's gusto on it. He flat out said, hey, these guys want to be here. They want to be in Florida. And if things go really well, they may want to stick around longer. You don't get attendance in Hawaii. I mean, heck, I was at the Hawaii Bowl when UCF was there, and they couldn't give tickets away for that game. They were trying to. They couldn't. No one wanted to go. They're just trying to give them random people on the street. They just weren't interested. The local guys weren't in. They don't care. So, I mean, that's kind of the same philosophy you're going to get with a senior style game for all-stars on the island. It's too expensive to get there.
Bring back the Gridiron Classic. And you remember where it was played the last couple of years?
I don't remember.
It was played at apparently there is a polo stadium in the Villages where they played it. Yeah, it was at the Citrus Bowl for a couple of years, and then they moved it to the Villages. It was there for like 2 or 3 years, and then the game went away. But yeah, that's what they were dealing with. But anyway, I thought, like I said, so the wrap on this. By the way, one of the questions I'm getting here, and I want to put it to you guys before we take a break, and then when we return, we'll talk with Todd Dagenais. Ballpark figure for a year when the first 2 phases will be complete. The Recovery Cove and the stadium expansion with the seating.
Eric, why don't you go first?
I just want to know if we're going to have a healthy running back core by the time phase 1 even gets close to finishing.
That's not what I asked you.
I think that's a little more. I'm more concerned about the running backs right now than our backfield.
That's not
who's
what I
playing.
asked you. We'll get to that in a second.
What was the question?
Screw it. I'll answer first.
Yeah.
Go for it, Drew.
I think the McNamara Recovery Cove and the field changes in the parking lot happens within 5 years. All the pieces are in place. The most expensive part, which is going to be the river, that's already
just
paid
in time
for.
when that new TV contract kicks in, wherever league we're in.
Well, I think it'll be a little longer than that, but
maybe.
I think that is going to move pretty quickly because the most expensive part of that project's already done. And all you're going to do is lose a little bit of tailgating spots, for the premier parking, and you're just going to shuffle things around. I think that's within 5 years. Now, the stadium upgrades, I think, is within 10 to 15. It's going to take more time. You're going to, concrete, steel, not cheap. And then the architecture and design of the launch club is, there's going to have to be a lot of money. And there's a lot of other capital projects going on that we haven't talked about.
Mm-hmm.
The changes with the softball field. I believe there was a new video board coming from baseball that was still being installed. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's not on the future plan, but it's on the now plan. And they talked about
one can hope
other facilities, not just football related, that are also on the plan. So I don't think phase 2 is going to be all that quick. There's a lot of.
So what you're saying you're saying we can make money if we did a shirt that said UCF stands for under construction forever. We can make some money.
There's all sorts of marketing ploys that can be done.
I'm thinking the goal is for that 2030 game against Florida.
That's a good shot. That's a good. I actually agree with that. I think that's a goal. Yeah. I agree with that.
9 years. I mean, that's
a good number.
It's ambitious, but I mean, they're going to really have to push hard on that.
I think it's ambitious, but I think it's doable, especially if you get a new TV contract, if things, they're not going to get a new TV contract. You can't
bank on a new TV contract though. Cause you can't assume you're going to get something on that. You got to go based on what you have right now.
Well, the midway point right now for that is 2025, right? So that if there's any sort of movement, if the current TV contract gets boosted because somebody comes over, or if there's another option that comes up down the way that brings in some more revenue.
And it's backloaded.
It is backloaded, heavily backloaded, by the way, heavily backloaded from what we've seen. So that's a possibility. We'll have to wait and see, but that should be.
I just hope we have a healthy backfield by the time we get to that Florida game in 2030. I'm not convinced we'll ever have a healthy backfield.
We have a healthy backfield. All right. We'll get to that in a little bit, but first we're going to take a break. When we return, our preseason previews continue. Number 2 is coming along. We had Tiffany Roberts-Hadak last week as for preview number 1.
And already good karma. Already good karma there.
Yes, which we'll talk about in segment 3. But in segment 2, Todd Dagenais, head coach of UCF Volleyball, joins us to talk about his team's quest for a 4th consecutive conference championship. They were picked to be the number 1 team in the preseason in the American. And McKenna Melville, the preseason player of the year. We will preview the Knights with their head coach when we return. It's the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
All right, welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Joining us now, as promised, the head volleyball coach of UCF in his, Todd, what is it now, 15 years?
13, I think.
13, 14, somewhere around there. I've lost count. What I have not lost count of is the fact, Todd Dagenais, that you guys have won 46 of your last 48 in conference and 75 of the last 90 overall. I would say that's actually pretty good, isn't it?
If you say so, I believe you.
it's you never I can never get you to crack, man. This is unbelievable. No. It's all right. Well, here we are. It's the fall of 2021. Feels like we just saw you in the spring. I was ready to say last year, but last season you guys went 16-2, 8-0 in the conference, won your third straight American Athletic Conference championship. Second straight year you did it in a tournament, but I know that the season did not end the way you wanted. But one of the things that I was talking about that Eric and I were talking about with Tiffany Roberts-Sahadak is the balance of going from a spring season straight into the fall, because it doesn't really give the team much time to dwell on things. So as you guys prepare for this season, how fresh is that in the team's memory right now?
I think every single team that played a spring sport and has to turn around playing the fall again. You think about a cell phone battery. You get done in the spring and your battery's at about 5%. And then you plug it in and you go a month and then you start working out again. And you hope to start the season at about 85 or 90%. And for us, you end the spring season, you get right into workouts, you move on to summer camp, and then you move into the fall. And really our battery is at 10%. And so we're already in the red area and just getting started. So this is going to be which team just has the pure grit to ignore their body and ignore their mind and just say, I'm good enough to do this. I can do this.
How have you changed the approach to like your preseason conditioning and all that? Because I find this kind of stuff kind of nerdy but interesting, because you're thrown into you guys are creatures of habit, right? But now you've been thrown way out of your habit with these 2 seasons back to back.
Right. The summer really sets up our fall strength program. But it's the spring that leads into the summer. We build up a nice solid core in the spring. Then we just go hard in the summer. And then we taper down just before we begin two-a-days. We didn't get to do that in the spring, which means summer had to be limited to a degree. Now we're in fall and we're already in a management type scenario where, it's October or November and we're trying to taper for the NCAA tournament. It's just going to be about just trying to get through, but I'm proud of the team. They're getting up at 6:15, 3-4 times a week, lifting, doing their conditioning, doing what they can do to make sure that they can make it to the end of what's going to be a long season.
Let me ask you about this group that you have, because this is probably the most experienced group that I think you probably have ever had in terms of returning from one season to another. You have 7 seniors, or what are classified as fifth-year players, who got the extra year because of the pandemic, and real stars coming back. Not just McKenna Melville, but Tally Marmon, who is huge, Amber Olson, Catherine Westlich, Narissa Moravik. You have this really good core coming back. Anne-Marie Watson, of course. You can never forget her. So, how do you view this group, and how hungry are they coming into the season? Because for some of them, we don't know right now, but even though they do get an extra year of eligibility, some of them might be thinking this might be it, right?
Sure. Yeah, no, in terms of hunger, you don't have to worry about that with this group. They came in as freshmen and they won. I think they were supposed to finish 6th or 7th. They won. And they repeated as sophomores. Then they repeated as juniors, So there's a culture amongst that group that is win. It's just win. I don't care how you do it, you win. And I guess we're lucky in that aspect that we have so many returning players, basically returning an entire starting lineup, except for libero. And it's a group that's still hungry. We're still trying to build history here. We've got a great history in the program, but we're trying to win a 4th championship here. And we're trying to do it in the 5th or 6th toughest volleyball league in the country. And that brings itself some pretty good challenges. And then, we have the goal of making the NCAA tournament and going farther into the NCAA tournament than what we have. Our challenge, it's just like any other Olympic sports. You have to go through Florida, being ranked in the top 4, or Florida State being ranked in the top 4 before you get to go past the 1st and 2nd round. So, that's the way it is. We just got to get ourselves ready. And then we have to put ourselves in the position to go to the NCAA tournament, whether that's a championship or an at-large. And then we have to be prepared to beat who we need to beat.
McKenna Melville, once again, she's going to be the preseason player of the year. Do you
have a crystal ball or something?
I'm let me put it this way. I'm not a gambling guy, but if I were, I think she's probably going to be it. But I think what really helped her last year, as great as she was and all the times that she put the team on her back, was the fact that she had somebody backing her up who was also a real threat. We know how good Anne-Marie Watson is on the opposite side, but also having Tali Marmon in there and the way she stepped in, given the limited time that she had to really develop chemistry with the team, was so key. So now that you have these weapons, what sort of new things are you expecting from your big hitters this year as we head into the fall of 2021?
We just want them to get a few percentages better. Nothing major. I think the greatest challenge is the depth. You look at the right side, and sure, everybody thinks Anne-Marie Watson, but you can't forget Mackenzie Chambers. She continues to get better and better every day. And then you look at the left side, and we brought in Heidi Bonday, who can play both left and right. 6'4", long arms, plays left, right, and is playing really well in preseason. Maddie Kinney has come in strong from Colorado, and that's another left side hitter. Add that to Mary Beth and Stella, who's already here. So we've got incredible depth on the outside and the right side. I think for the first time ever, we are deeper than we've ever been in the middle. Amari Williams now is eligible. Then you bring in Claudia Dillon, who is a very high level player from the SEC at Missouri. Add them to a pair of middle blockers who were top 5 in the nation combined. And then you add Megan Lively to that. We've got 5 middle blockers that have size, that have speed, that can run different plays, different play sets, match up well against different teams. There's a lot of mixing and matching that could go on there. And, I'm happy with our setting. Amber's coming back as, one of those 3-year starters already for her 4th year. Emily Lawrence proved that last year she could go in and she could stabilize and run a team just as well. And she is even more confident this year. Dresdy Pass has a lot of experience under her belt. So we actually have 3 setters with major game and championship experience. That's a great feeling to have as a coach. You look at our liberos, and it's a dogfight right now between the freshman Caitlin Grimes, who is really a special player, and then that's only made Chloe Schneer go, get better. And Chloe's playing the best I've ever seen her play. She's passing the best. She's playing the best defense, serving. I've got 2 liberos. Either one of them could play on any given night. It's not like a Jordan Pingle or a Mackenzie Kuchmaner, or an Ariana. It could be any one of the two, and I'm perfectly comfortable with either. So I think for the first time, I look at the floor, and probably because of the COVID, extra year rule, there's no issues with depth whatsoever. We're experienced, we're deep, we're knowledgeable, we're hungry. It's all the things the coach really wants to see and hear. There's not a lot of question marks as far as that go. The question marks are, who's it going to be and when is it going to be them?
Yeah. I was looking through the stats in comparison to the conference, and we've talked many times before about how strong this conference really is, and for some reason, everyone nationally just sleeps on the American every year. But you guys were number one in the league in hitting percentage, and also in lowest opponents hitting percentage. It just goes on and on. The blocks, the aces, the serving game was on point. Where are some of the places where you're like, I think we can probably improve the most right here in terms of getting to that next level?
The first thing you said pissed me off.
Sorry.
No, it's not you. It's just ridiculous that you take a look at us in Houston, who is at least our equal, and you look at Tulane and how they pushed us to 5 last year. You look at Temple and how they pushed us, and those are 4 top 25 level teams. Now, how can you tell me a league with 4 of the 12 teams isn't a premier league? They call a league with 1 team or 2 teams a top level league, but you line it up on paper and you go team for team. This league is far deeper than teams that wear that special patch on their shoulder or have a really shiny name across their chest. I'll put this league up against a lot of leagues, and we'll have a chance to do it this year. Everybody's experienced, everybody's returning a lot. Everybody's going to be good. This is not going to be a shoo-in for any of the top teams. Those were just 4 that I mentioned. You can go farther down. Wichita State certainly could win the league. You look at, I was trying to do the coaches poll for the beginning of the year, which should be released here soon. And I mean, I had the most difficult time doing 1 through 8. And then you look at 9, 10, and 11, and for most conferences, that's an automatic win, right? That's when you fly in and you win, you leave. It's not like that. It's not going to be like that in our league. Those teams that are going to be at the bottom are growing. They're getting better. New coaches, systems, they're maturing. It's going to be a tough out, especially on the road, especially on a Sunday. So what are we doing? Everything that you saw last year was predicated on our serving. Really driving the serve, driving teams out of system so they didn't get a great first shot. We didn't let them take a good first shot. And then we try to capitalize when they couldn't take a first shot and try to score right away. Obviously, being able to pass the ball on first ball kill and get out of their serve, no runs a 3, that's going to be something that, but I think we really want to just continue to improve our serve and pass. Last year, our pass was above average, but it wasn't great. Last year, I thought our serve was really good. It's what led us out of trouble when our offense struggled. This year, it's going to have to be more balanced. But if we can get our serving numbers up into the range where teams are passing below a 2.0 on us, they're siding out 50% or below, and we're siding out at 65 or 70. That's a 5-point win right there in a set. So we just got to do our job. We just got to execute the serve pass game, and you're gonna hear me say it a lot this year. It's gonna become really boring, but that's the crux of it. What separates us from a lot of teams right now is our serving, block, and defense. The reason why we racked up the number of blocks we did is because we knew where the ball was going to go. We knew where the ball was going to go because the serve was so good. They only had one option. So that's what we have to do. We just have to go out there and we have to bomb serves, and we have to force teams to pass well to side out. And then we have to do our part in the offensive side of the game.
All this stuff is going to get put to the test real quick. This schedule that you put together is, wow. This is as good a schedule as we've ever seen. And you've had some good ones, and especially in the last few years. but we know how scheduling affects it, affects the RPI and how much the RPI factors into, who gets to go where at the end of the season. Just looking at the matches that you have coming up at home, Georgia Tech, St. John's, Penn State. You go on the road for Clemson and South Carolina. Then you come back home. You got Florida Gulf Coast, Florida State, Georgia, Miami, Gulf Coast again, FAU before they even get to conference. This is a wild non-conference schedule that you have before you even get to as tough as the conference is and we expect it to be. So I'm guessing we know your philosophy. You're going to play for that. You're going to play really hard for that RPI and test your team early. What are going to be some of the things that you want to see from how the team gets through this grinder that they're going to go through in the first 4 weekends?
Well, you talk about the RPI, and that's exactly what it is. You've got to play quad one teams, those teams in the top 50. Teams are going to have an opportunity to either win their conference or have 20 to 25 wins. You got to play those teams. You get double bonus points in the RPI for playing those kind of teams. And so we scheduled as many as we could. We tried to schedule 12. It's just going to depend on where some of those teams fall on the spectrum when it's all said and done. But it's possible we could play all 12 in the quad one when this is all said and done. If not, at least 3/4 of our schedule is going to be in quad one. That's going to give us a really nice boost, nice double bonus points in the non-conference. So, we're good enough to go on the floor and play a Penn State. We're good enough to go on the floor, and play these types of teams. Now, how we'll compete. That's what I'm interested to see. If they jump out on us, do we push back? We've done this. We've done this against Florida. We've done it against Florida State. We've done it against USC. There's no reason why we can't do it against a great team, great program like Penn State. Georgia Tech, you brought them up. Those are 2 top 25 teams right there. We're just loading up. We're loading up on teams, and we may come out of the preseason. If we come out 50-50, that's awesome. If we come out ahead of the game, that's okay too, but there's a chance we might come out a little bit behind. And we'll have to make up for it in conference if we have to. But the non-conference schedule was designed for us to head into conference and be able to stare across the net at a Houston, a Tulane, a Temple, a Wichita, and say, we've played you 10 times already. And that's the way it's going to be set up this year.
Let me ask you about kind of zooming out from UCF in the world of college volleyball. To some extent, the sport is continuing to gain momentum. And I think this past year has been such a really good year for women's sports in particular. But when we look at volleyball this year, especially just a couple weeks ago, Team USA women's volleyball indoors won the gold. Jordan Thompson was on that team just like you predicted she would be a couple years ago, and you said she would be all these years ago. And it's starting to feel like, in particular, softball and volleyball are gaining a lot more traction in the national consciousness. And so when you see that, how important is it for the sport in general that we see things like, the women's volleyball team for Team USA winning the gold, and also just locally, a player like Jordan Thompson, who we saw multiple times here, as part of Cincinnati, playing against UCF, a familiar name playing at that level.
Yeah. First I want to say how proud I am of Jordan. She was a rival at Cincinnati, and we had some pretty memorable moments playing against her, both good and bad. But to see her come out, and I was telling right from the time she was a sophomore, I was telling people she's going to be an Olympian. There are not many kids that are 6'4", 6'5", jump touching close to 10-7, 10-8, 10-9. She's going to get her shot because she can pass and she can play defense and she can serve, she can block. And sure enough, she got pulled out early on and identified as a top prospect. I didn't know if this year would be her year. I thought that maybe the next Olympics in Paris would be her first shot, but she got better in training out there, and there was a weakness at right side. There was some turnover, and it gave her the opportunity to step in. And she was the best attacker in the Olympics until she got hurt. And there's no reason to believe that wouldn't have continued, because we know how good she is. We've seen her at her best. And I just want to say how proud I am of her. And I hope she gets that message, because being in our league gives our league legitimacy, that Olympians do come from our conference. And the job that the Cincinnati staff did, Molly and Phil, getting her ready for that and having her on 2 years of training ready to start in the Olympics was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun for me, because I look back, and when I was with USA Volleyball, one of my tasks was to help identify and cultivate young talent. Well, on those first teams that we started out there were the makings of this Olympic team right here. Micah Hancock, Jordan Poulter, Haley Washington. The 11 of the 12 were in the USA pipeline that we were building in Colorado Springs. The only one that wasn't was Jordan Thompson, because she hadn't been identified yet as being one of those level players. And so having the ability to work with 11 of the 12, either through a youth national or junior national or an A2 program, was really a lot of fun, because knowing them all well and seeing how they developed was really cool. Even April and Alex are two players that I worked with extensively on the indoor side. To see them win a gold, April finally get her gold before she hangs it up. If she hangs it up, I guess I don't really know what she's going to do. But Alex is just getting started. She just converted from indoor to outdoor when she realized that she didn't really have a spot indoor. And she moved to the beach, and within 4 years, she won a gold medal. That is just sickening, unprecedented. But I got to work with her as a 14 and 15-year-old on the youth national team. And it doesn't surprise me that she worked hard enough to make her dream come true.
Wow. It's amazing to see, it always, for years, it always felt like all that talent was out there somewhere. And now it's right here. It's right here in our own backyard. We see it. You've seen these players for years and years. You can talk about them from, here to eternity. And that's fun to see the sport really growing and its growth come, be in this close of proximity to us, because we see it every day. All right, Eric Lopez is going to get mad at you if I don't ask you something like this. Okay, so, all right, we've seen, every team, especially the last 3 years that you've won, that you won the conference championship. By the way, that's another thing. The format's changing again this year. No more conference tournament. We've talked about this many times before in the past, and I know you're thrilled that it's not there anymore. Even though you drop in like a boss and win it the 2 times that we do have it here in the American. No conference tournament this year. Is it? Do you see it? You must see it as a tremendous advantage for your team too, though, right?
I don't know how I see it. All I know is that it's fair. It's fair that we play everybody home and away. There is no play this team twice, this team once, skew seedings, only X number of teams go to a tournament. All I know is this is fair for all 11 teams in the conference to play everybody else home and away. There is not a more fair schedule you can come up with. So I was not a proponent of the conference tournament because of Cincinnati. What happened to Cincinnati? They go through the year, they're hardly even touched, and they come in here and they catch us on a hot day, and we end up conference champions. Now, the only matches that we lost that year were to Cincinnati. But, that's what I was afraid of. Someone goes through 3 months of nearly being perfect, and then on one day they lose it against a hot team. And the same thing almost happened last year. We're in the conference tournament, and Tulane got hot. And fortunately, we were able to hold them off. But, to have something like that negate 3 months of winning and hard work, that'd have been pretty tough to handle. So, no, I'm not going to miss the tournament. I know a lot of my colleagues were really dependent on the tournament. They wanted the tournament. For me, I want fairness. I want fairness for SMU. That's another team I didn't even mention. They're another team that could win the whole thing. And I want fairness for SMU. I want fairness for Temple and Tulane, Tulsa, Wichita, Cincinnati, everybody, Houston that's in contention to win this. The only fair thing is that everybody plays everybody twice, once home, once away.
Here's the question Lopez wanted me to ask you. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
So every team kind of has its own personality, and you can kind of compare them to a pro wrestler at a particular point in their career or at some point. This year's team, if you could compare them to a professional, to a WWE or AEW talent right now, who would they be coming into this season?
God, what a stupid question. Ooh, this team is fun. They're funny. They work incredibly hard. Wow.
Oh, he stumped you, Todd. This is
No,
great.
he didn't stump me. I'm just trying to think of the right one. It's going to be somebody that's probably a little bit off the wall, kind of a overachiever.
Say maybe a little bit of Daniel Bryan, maybe.
Yeah, I'm thinking either Daniel Bryan or Sheldon Benjamin. Isn't Sheldon Benjamin Little Macho Man? Is that?
Oh, you're asking the wrong guy there.
Well, there you go. I stumped you. I think it's Sheldon Benjamin, but he played the new Macho Man, the Little Macho Man. But he's funny. He works hard. His character is great. He's a champion. So Daniel Bryan, I would probably say, is the best because we got a very blue collar, hardworking mentality about us. And you look at a Daniel Bryan and, in his size and what he's done to achieve what he's done. So that's a pretty good, that was the first one that came to my mind was Daniel Bryan. But then I was thinking of Sheldon Benjamin a little bit because another undersized guy that is a hard worker. But we'll go with Daniel Bryan.
Yes. All right, Daniel Bryan it is. Todd Dagenais, head coach of UCF Volleyball. Once again, getting ready for what could be at the end their fourth consecutive American Athletic Conference championship. Todd, it's always good to spend some time with you, catch up and talk about volleyball. I'll see you at the first tournament with Georgia Tech and St. John's and Penn State coming to town.
It's not about what could be the fourth time. It's about what could be at the end of the Georgia Tech match. That's what I'm interested in.
All right,
I'm interested in just playing hard that first weekend.
All right. Hey, stay healthy, stay safe. I'll see you there. All right.
Sounds good. Thanks, buddy. Take care. Okay.
Thanks as always to Todd. I'm always so good. So happy to talk to him. And just get the lowdown on volleyball. He's so locked in like all the time on everything. It's hard to get him to say, I've tried so hard all these years that I've known him to try and get him to say stuff. And he just won't take the bait, which is hilarious. But I mean, that's what coaches do, I guess. So congratulate. Anyway, by the way, it is confirmed UCF is the unanimous preseason selection for the volleyball preseason poll. 10 first place votes. Now you're not allowed to vote for yourself. That's the rule. So Todd voted for Houston number one.
Probably fair. I mean, that's fair. I mean, Houston was kind of played well in the spring, kind of faded at the end, but I think they're getting them positive steps there. So I think
that program is moving in the right direction, right. Man. They're going to be scary for a couple years here, I think.
Yeah, I think Houston definitely could. That makes sense.
Following up from UCF and Houston, 3 SMU, 4 Tulane, 5 Cincinnati, 6 Temple. I think people are sleeping on Temple a little bit. I think they're going to be better than that. South Florida is 7th. By the way, your preseason player of the year, no surprise, McKenna Melville. She also made preseason all conference along with Anne-Marie Watson. And they were both unanimous selections along with Abby Jackson of Houston and Marta Vitkovich of South Florida and Lexi Douglas of Tulane. Yeah, Lexi Douglas is back again. My gosh, she's been playing for like 7 years. It's unbelievable. Anyway. So there's your preseason picks. I think this is, everybody's going to have some things to talk about here in terms of the, going from the spring to the fall. It's going to be big, but this is going to be a ringer of a season, especially with that schedule he put together. Right, Eric?
Oh, it is. I mean, you got Penn State, you got Florida State at home. It's a tough schedule, and you have high expectations. And I know you guys talked about that a little bit, but this is the highest expectation to the point where I would argue not football, but women's volleyball has the most pressure this fall because they're trying to do something historic, going for a four-peat, and they're trying to go deep into the NCAA tournament with a core here that's been together for a while.
Yeah.
Football, if they lose a couple games, hey, it's year one of Gus. There's a transition, stuff like that. I don't think there's as much pressure there the first year. Women's soccer we'll get to later, so I don't think I won't spoil the news. There's no pressure there either compared to volleyball. When you have a generational player like McKenna Melville, who has a chance to be the first UCF player to be a 4-time All-American. She's been 3-time could be a multi-time player of the year. I don't know, Jeff, do you think, we both saw Jordan Thompson in person, and we both said at that time, and I remember Erin Campbell broadcasting it, that she said it, that's a future Olympian. Well, she is. Yep. She's now a future gold medalist.
No, she's a current gold medalist.
Right, she's a now current gold medalist this past few weeks back. I mean, is it crazy to think? I think McKenna has potential to be in that mix 3 years from now, maybe 7 years from now in Los Angeles. I mean, volleyball's different. I get that. I just think that highly of her as a player.
I'm biased in this respect. I mean, I think she deserves that shot. She's obviously in the USA system right now. The one thing she doesn't have going for her is she's not as big and tall as some other players that play on that outside position. She's not nearly as tall as Jordan Thompson. Jordan Thompson.
Well, you're right. That's always been an issue in volleyball, correct? Size,
or 6'3", 6'4". McKenna's like 6'1", and I'm not saying she's short, but you look on Team USA, that's that's kind of what they're looking for. It's basically a national all-star team, but. Never say never with McKenna. She's so talented in this sort of freight train way. I mean, there's just nothing that she allows to get in her way. And I think that is what's going to,
right. But I only bring that
wherever she goes, that's what's going to carry.
Sure. But I only bring that up because Tyra Turner, who I think is regarded as the best UCF volleyball player of all time, the greatest player ever. She was an alternate, I believe, on the Olympic team, indoor and beach, I believe. That's how talented she was. I mean, McKenna can be in this conversation. Drew, I've told you this. If you get an opportunity, Drew, and I think you might have a chance maybe September 11th if you end up going to the football game against Bethune, volleyball play 5, go get a chance to see McKenna Melville in person. This is a generational player. And so with that comes expectations and pressure that, to exceed, and this group, you know, they want to get past that round of 32. No Division I UCF volleyball team's ever been past a round of 32. But more important than that, I think these players, knowing them and gotten to know them in the last few years, and I think there's that bad taste in their mouth from that High Point match that, you know what, we beat ourselves in that match. We're better than that, and I think they want to finish strong. So I think, to me, volleyball has the most pressure. It's a good problem to have. It's the big expectations, and it could be a historic year in a lot of levels. You mentioned going for a 4-peat.
I mean, heavy is the head that wears the crown, and we're talking conference crown. And every year it gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and it's that much harder to maintain that level of near perfection that's required to get through, the conference gauntlet. So are they hungry?
By the way, Drew, sorry to didn't want to interrupt, but I wanted to go off of that point. Remember, and I told Todd this during the interview. They've won 46 of their last 48 conferences.
That's ridiculous.
That's incredible. The only two they lost, Eric Lopez?
Cincinnati
with Jordan Thompson. And then they beat that was the year they beat them in the conference final.
I thought Todd makes a good point, and I and it's a fascinating thing to follow. You just played a short season in the spring, intense. Make it to the NCAAs. I believe, now you've got this fall. How do you, from a physical fatigue standpoint, mental, that's going to be all big factors, especially in volleyball. You remember, Jeff, the one year that Jordan Thompson got hurt and basically ended up redshirting. Cincinnati fell off a cliff, right? I'm not, this is something to monitor, not just at UCF, but I think in the sport of volleyball this year is, do we see a rapid rash of injuries because of this unique, basically you're playing 2 straight semesters.
Right. Well, that's where the depth is going to come in. And I think that having all those seniors on the team, plus we're going to see, like Todd said, a couple of freshmen that maybe he normally would have redshirted, we'll see a little bit more of. They're going to be called upon to play in certain spots. He may not play all his seniors every match in the entire schedule, and that's just based strictly on.
I don't think he wants to. I think he wants to learn about what he has. I think he wants to put everybody ready to go. And he has said this to you many a times. He said this to me in the spring during the post games. He doesn't want McKenna to carry the load. He wants other players to be ready to chip and to carry that load. And again, not to harp on that one match against High Point, but there was a situation where, man, if a couple other players could have had a better match and helped McKenna, you could have pulled that match out. That's the next step. Is as great as McKenna is, you don't want to just depend on her, especially in a year like this where you just had a spring. I agree with you, Jeff. I think he wants that depth and he wants balance. He wants balance, especially on the offensive end. Yeah.
All right. Well, their season starts pretty quick here with this wild schedule that Todd's put away. He and Tiffany Roberts-Hadak must be like trying to one up each other in terms of the difficulty.
Well, obviously they missed having non-conference in the spring. They're making up for it here.
Saturday is the Black and Gold scrimmage at 7 p.m. Friday, August 27th, 7 p.m. The UCF Challenge gets underway with the Knights taking on Georgia Tech. St. John's on August the 28th, Saturday at 11 a.m. I'll be calling that match on ESPN Plus, by the way. And then Penn State later that evening at 7:30 with all the home matches taking place on ESPN.
Drew, I know you got a lot of travel, Drew, but I got September 11th circled for you. Huge day on campus. Football against Bethune, volleyball against Georgia right before that.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can, if I can pull off the double header.
Pull the double?
I'm just saying, Drew, you could pop in, and then years from now, you could tell your kids, I may have seen the greatest UCF volleyball player in person. You never know.
The legend.
Yeah. The legend. McKenna Melville. All right. We come back. We got lots to talk about still. Women's soccer getting their season underway against Texas. Some football news, in particular, having to do with injuries that we got to clean up, and a few other things we wanted to get to as well. Stick around. The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is back after this. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Drew Glukov with you here, talking about, we're starting the third segment with the very beginning of the 2021-2022 UCF athletic season. It got underway tonight, Thursday, August 19th, with UCF women's soccer, who always starts their season really early, taking on the Texas Longhorns. And Eric Lopez and Drew Glukov, boy, did they horns down tonight against Texas. Wow.
Payback.
That was illegal in some states.
Hey, look, that was
4
payback.
Goals.
Yeah.
4-0 shutout win for UCF on the home pitch.
Shellacked.
Kristen Scott scored twice on 3 shots. Daria Rajai, who, by the way, is the sister of Farah Rajai, who played on the volleyball team a couple years ago, had a goal. It was just a total whitewash. 3-0 at the break. And UCF was just absolutely dominant throughout the game. You got to give credit where credit is due here. Tiff talked to us last week, Eric, and I felt like she was a lot more confident in the offensive power of this team compared to last year. And lo and behold, she was right. Last year in just 7 games, all of them in conference, UCF scored just 9 goals. Just tonight in 90 minutes, they scored 4. So I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. And I know Texas is not, they're not a top 25 team. I think their RPI was 160 some last.
Well, but here's the thing. We got to be careful. This is going to be weird with volleyball and both soccers here. It's tricky to evaluate if you're just going to evaluate on the spring, because a lot of these teams didn't have full rosters in the spring. Some player like UCF didn't have a full roster.
Yeah, it's true.
As Coach Dagenais mentioned. So
Kristen Scott only played a handful of games, didn't score a goal last year.
And did not score in the spring. She scored 8 goals in 2019, which was the last full year. She was the best player on the pitch on Thursday night, which is impressive when you consider that Texas had Julia Grosso, who's an All-American who played for Canada and kicked the game-winning penalty kick against Sweden to win the gold medal for them in the Olympics. So, and Texas, actually, Chris Henderson, who's a guru when it comes to women's college soccer, has Texas in the field for the tournament. So there's high expectations at Texas, and UCF just put it to them. So it's a good win. It's a big win. You always when you're playing a difficult schedule like this, it is imperative to get off to a good start, to feel good about yourself, and especially with this group, as you mentioned, Jeff. UCF had their struggles in the spring, so you want to put that behind them. And I think playing this match the way they did puts that behind them, and it helps to have a Kristen Scott from 2019 playing at the level of 2019. She was the best player on the pitch. The defense was sound with experience, and it's a big win. I would say this. This is probably one of the most significant days in the UCF women's soccer probably since 2017. When you consider Coach Dagenais announces they get because you get the extension, they announce the extension.
That's right.
Big news there. Coach Dagenais is going to be extended through 2025. And you're going in.
Job security.
Right. And you've got questions. And look, the football coach here is obviously going to always be the most scrutinized coach on campus. Put that aside, I would argue the second most scrutinized head coach in UCF is the women's soccer coach. Why? Because of the history of it. Hello, the greatest women's soccer player, arguably in the history of the planet, played here. And the rich history of this program, the expectations are through the roof with this program. So there is always high expectations with this program. So when this program hasn't been to the tournament since 2017, that's not a big deal to a lot of other programs, but to this program, it is a big deal. So I think Thursday night is a huge night for this program because I think now, that's the best they've looked in a few years. And I think you saw why Coach Dagenais was, as you mentioned, Jeff, confident about the experience. They looked like an experienced group, which they did not look like in the spring.
Yeah, no, that was fun. That was fun to see. And they came out prepared. They came out with their hair on fire. That was, by the way, this is and Drew, you mentioned this before we came on during the break. This is a big night for American Athletic Conference women's soccer because not only does UCF wipe out Texas, Florida goes down to Tampa, loses to South Florida 2-1, and Houston defeated Oklahoma 3-1 rather. Hashtag it just means more, huh?
Yeah, maybe UCF, man. USF are your favorites for the Big 12 now. Just go ahead and make that realignment there. No, that's a good start. That Houston result's a big result against Oklahoma. The South Florida is not a surprise. South Florida is the better team. Florida's got a new head coach. Becky Burley retired, is now with the Pride. But that being said, and I know it comes off as a homer, the more significant result of the three is the UCF Texas one. That is the score that is going to register throughout the country in the first week here of women's college soccer season.
Well, they bageled them. I mean, you got the shutout. That always carries more value at that point. But you look at it this way: the other two matches going the Americans' way also helps UCF. You need those out of conference wins by the other teams. Boost that strength of conference that's going to help towards the postseason. So this has just been a great night for American women's soccer.
By the way, and a disastrous night for the Big 12. Let's add to this: Kansas State lost to Weber State.
Yikes!
Woo! Are you sure this league's not dead already?
Yikes.
Maybe they're dead already.
The big DOA.
Yeah, but to your point, Drew, that's a good point you make, because if you're the American, honestly, I think the American feels they should be more than a 2-bid league and probably should be a 3 to 4-bid league. And I think that's where, again, if UCF returns to that mix, and I talked this last week, challenge South Florida and Memphis, then this league will be a 3-bid league. But again, it's one match, but it's a positive result. This was a very clean match, and I thought UCF, even though they had the big lead, still pounded Texas in the second half. It's not like they played safe. They were still aggressive. And I think with the depth And Coach Sahaydak loves depth because she can bring players off the bench, especially when they play in this hot, humid weather in Florida early in September. She wants to wear down teams that are coming. Even a team like Texas, I know, coming down to Florida, they're not used to this humidity that you're used to, especially this year where like, what are we in 100? It feels like 100 every time we go outside.
Man, it's an absolute swamp out there.
It is a bath out there.
Humidity's been high. But to get to your point, Eric, this is how you get a three bid plus league. Is you have to have those out of conference wins by multiple members of the conference. You got to raise the status up, and that's how you do it.
Yeah, boy, this a good night for UCF women's soccer. They get again, I'm really excited about the offense. We talked about this in the preview. We had our soccer preview up this week. Everything you need to know about UCF women's soccer coming into this year. And we expected Kristen Scott to be a real factor, and lo and behold,
big factor.
She has been big factor.
And it feels nice for a change, Jeff, that we're talking about a soccer season starting, and we're not talking about a player or two that just decided they signed to a pro contract before the season started.
Yeah,
I feel like we've been dealing with that, and that's been part of it the last couple of years. Whether it be a Stephanie Sanders, and obviously in soccer is so unique because if you get a pro contract, you have to take it. You have to take it. And unfortunately, with women's soccer, sometimes they've been hurt by this a little bit. But this year, everybody's kind of that's healthy to go, ready to go, is clicking.
It's always good to go 1-0, right? Are we not going to use that? No. Okay.
That's in Knoxville now. We don't use that anymore.
All right. Well, UCF women's soccer.
They're going to have trouble going 1-0 over there in Knoxville.
They have a week off until they play their next game at Florida. Next Thursday night, 7 p.m. Next home game, August 29th. That's Sunday against LSU. So their counterparts, men's soccer, got the exhibition season off to a rousing start with 7 goals against Stetson, 7-2.
Is Stetson just that bad?
I don't
know. No
comment.
I mean, wow.
Plead the fifth. Moving on.
They have one more exhibition actually tomorrow at FAU. If you're a Knight fan in the Boca Raton area, go ahead and head down there and support the Knights. But their schedule came out, Eric, August 26th, Thursday. That's next Thursday is the opener at home against FIU. They have a home game against UNF 3 days later. On the road at Virginia Tech and NC State. Home for Florida Gulf Coast, and then the conference schedule starts on September the 18th. And here's this run, man, for American Athletic Conference men's soccer, where you only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You only have basically 10 teams, you only have. I'm even losing count here. Just looking at it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams in the American for men's soccer. So you have the double round robin format coming back this year. It's going to be quite a ringer once again for men's soccer this year with this non-conference schedule, because we're seeing the level of soccer here in the state of Florida really increase and have a moment here. And Coach Scott Calabrese is lining that up with FIU, UNF, and Florida Gulf Coast, in addition to 2 ACC teams.
Well, not just any 2 ACC teams. Virginia Tech was a Sweet 16 team. And the ACC is the number 1 conference in men's soccer. The big question, and we'll dive into this.
If you can't get Virginia to come around, at least it's not too bad to get Virginia Tech, right?
Exactly. The big question here, though, and I think this is, we're going to get into this more next week. Who's going to be a goalkeeper? Yannick is now pro. That's the biggest question in fall sports this year. Football aside, obviously, because there's a million football questions people always have, rightfully so, and I get all that. But the biggest question is who's going to be the goalkeeper at UCF men's soccer. You're replacing a legend in Yannick Ertl, who I think is a future UCF Athletic Hall of Famer. I would argue is the second greatest goalkeeper in the history of UCF soccer behind Winston DeBoats, who had a tremendous lengthy pro career. That is big shoes to fill, and I'm fascinated to see how that plays itself out. I think that's the biggest question, and I think that's part of the reason because of the scheduling, because you're going to have some inexperience potentially at the goalkeeper spot. The positive here from the spring, again, we'll get more into this. I think this offense will be dynamic back to what it was a couple years ago because the experience they got in the spring kind of started to grow up, and I think you saw some of that in the Stetson exhibition.
Yeah, it's going to be a three-way race between Matt Douglas, who, by the way, had a win last year, and kind of kept the ship righted until Yannick could come back. You remember when Yannick was hurt early in the year? That long winning streak that they had started with Matt Douglas.
Beat Memphis.
That big game against Memphis. Bernardo Brandau and also Tyler Levine, who's a redshirt freshman from St. Cloud, will also be competing for that spot. So we'll talk about that next week with head coach Scott Calabrese when he joins us for his preview. All right, let's switch over to football real quick. So unfortunate, a coming and a going. We'll start with the going. Unfortunately for UCF is RJ Harvey, who Jason Beatty from 247, soon to be the Orlando Sentinel. Congrats, Beatty. Was first to report it, where RJ tore his ACL and he's out for the year. Drew, we were expecting to see more, or I think we were planning to see more RJ Harvey than maybe we were expecting as the reports from Kent came out. But this is a blow to UCF in terms of what Gus Malzahn was expecting. Although they do have a pretty deep running back group, it got a lot shallower in the last week or so with Benno Thompson apparently leaving the program. So right now, your most experienced running back overall is Isaiah Bowser, who's the transfer from Northwestern. We're probably going to see a fair amount of Mark Anthony Richards and Johnny Richardson and a couple other guys, possibly even Trillion Coles at some point. But what does this do to the running back room with RJ now out for the year?
My take on it is not as much as people think. RJ Harvey is a physical specimen. He's not big, he's not heavy, but you wouldn't guess it by watching him play. He runs like
former quarterback, by the way.
Yeah, former quarterback from Virginia, and he runs like a wrecking ball. But being a former quarterback, he also is not experienced as a running back. Coming to UCF, he had zero running back experience. Kalia Davis, defensive lineman, has more running back experience than RJ Harvey because Davis was a running back in high school. I always like to throw that one out there just because it's one of those funny fun facts that you never would guess. But
yeah, it's true.
In my preview, I even hinted that, he's more of a play for 2022, and that was before he got hurt. Now, obviously, definitely a play for 2022 and not for this year. I always viewed Harvey as a dark horse as he gets more experience. During the spring game, early on, he struggled. As the game went on, he got more and more comfortable, started looking better and better. So he just needs time. And with this injury, perhaps he can get, get a medical red shirt, because I think he already used a red shirt previously. So he may be able to medical red shirt for an extra year of eligibility down the road if he chooses to. But UCF's in a decent spot. Mark Anthony Richards is a good running back, and he's taken a lot of the one stuff. Bowser was already
familiar with the system too from working with Gus before.
I mean, he only has 20 carries career wise, and it's like 20 carries, about 76 yards. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's about that. Yeah,
but we don't have any statistics on how many times he was running. He was running things in practice with Gus, and not having the opportunity to play.
Exactly.
That's the other thing.
Now, Isaiah Bowser is the bruiser back that UCF has been dying for since Taj McGowan left. He's got size, he's got strength. He's going to be used in your third down, short yardage back, your goal line back. He's going to be more situational. And then you have Johnny Richardson, who's going to be used like Adrian Killens was in his freshman year, as more of a change of pace back. But he's not going to be a guy who carries the load. I think Richards is going to be the main guy because he's more of an all-around back versus a speedster versus a bruiser. And I think that actually gives you a pretty good three-headed monster of three very different styles that gives a lot of flexibility for Gus Malzahn to utilize. Now, with him doing the no huddle, chances are they're not going to be switching out all that often because you don't want to give the defense a chance to do substitutions when you're trying to move a little bit quicker. It won't be hypo quick, but I mean a little bit quicker. But you still have depth below that. Demarius Good, who's actually outside of Bowser, the most experienced carry back on the team. I believe he's up at around 111 carries total. And then you mentioned Trillian Coles, and I think Anthony Williams down as a true freshman may be able to get a little bit of game time with the Harvey injury. But I don't think this is a red flag. Oh my God, the season's over. I don't think it's as serious as some people are saying it is. I think there's still a lot of capable talent here.
Yeah, I mean, it's never good to see two backs who you were counting on, who were high up your depth chart, go away. But that does show you how much depth UCF had, and Gus worked on that depth in the offseason. I think it's a good thing overall.
But the only thing I would say to that, though, is it's not good you're down to basically three guys that you feel comfortable with before the season starts in a year where you still have COVID around. You like to have as many bodies as you can, and none of these guys are proven yet. And that's good. That's the concern, is you have a young running backs, assignments, protecting the football. I tend to agree with you, Drew, that I think Harvey was I feel like Harvey was going to be that guy that gets a lot of hype in August and then come October didn't get a lot of carries except in mop-up time maybe. But it's still a body, and you've already lost a couple of bodies here. And in football, man, now you're one or two more injuries away from being in trouble. So that's my concern.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair concern. I think it's very fair, but I'm talking more of the red flag, the season's in trouble kind of thing. The
sky has not fallen.
The sky has, that's great. The sky has not fallen. I like that.
One coming to UCF that we wanted to talk about here. Multiple reports are now stating that, including from our sister site on SB Nation, that Joey Gatewood, a quarterback for Kentucky, who actually played at Kentucky last year and prior to that was at Auburn, will transfer to UCF. Gatewood is a big kid, 6'5", 221. He's originally from Bartram Trail High School in Jacksonville. He was a 4-star recruit, played in the Under Armour All-American game. He was an Elite 11 finalist, was recruited by Gus, went to Auburn, got a few cups of coffee in game action, mostly as a runner, but did put up a few numbers in a few games. Played most of his career games at Kentucky last season. He had one start against Georgia where he was less than impressive, but was primarily the backup to Terry Wilson. He's coming to UCF now, and I think that this is a pretty interesting a move here. His best game at Auburn in Gus's system, he had 102 yards and 2 touchdowns on 12 carries in mop-up duty against Kent State. And, this is something that's actually pretty interesting. There's a pretty full quarterback room at UCF, but right now Gabriel is the alpha dog. But if Dylan has a huge season, and I know that you've been through that you expect him to, there's a possibility with a very thin quarterback class coming out of college this year that, Dylan Gabriel may get some NFL, may have the ability to leave early and go to the NFL. I know UCF fans don't want to think about that, but that can never be something that's not too far from the front of your mind. And after that, well, you got a bunch of young guys back there, Parker Navarro, Mikey Keene, and now Joey Gatewood, who would be heading into his junior year and has experience in Gus's system. What do we think about this with Gatewood now, by all indications, getting ready to enter the fold? By the way, he wouldn't play this year, as far as we know, unless he hit the waiver lottery, because first of all, it's after July the 1st. And second of all, this is his second transfer. And with the new transfer, you obviously are allowed one free transfer, but he would have to now, in all likelihood, he's going to sit out the 2021 season and be ready for 2022. But Drew, what do you think?
Well, first things first, UCF had the walk-on Andrew Brito from Massachusetts transfer over. And I said, he's got to be the designated survivor. You keep him in a separate room from all the other quarterbacks. If COVID hits, he's your guy. Yeah, it doesn't sound great, but you got to have a designated survivor. This is very intriguing because I'm pretty convinced, short of an epic disaster, that Dylan Gabriel will leave for the NFL. This is not a strong quarterback class, and he has a chance to prove that he's not a system quarterback, because that's what dogs him right now under the Heupel system. Was a very simple playbook, really does not translate anywhere near for a pro quarterback. Basically it was throw a screen or bomb it. There wasn't much in between. But as we saw from the spring game, Gabriel had to move the ball a lot in a lot of different places in the time that he played. So this is an opportunity for him to kind of shake that negative system quarterback vibe. And I'm assuming that he's going to, because he's a smart kid, he's strong, and he's shown, at least so far, that he's got what it takes to be able to run Malzahn's offense. So I expect him to be gone. Then you got to worry about 2022. Who's left? As you said, you got Jones, you got Mikey Keene, you got Parker Navarro, you have Tommy Castellanos, who's a current verbal to UCF. I'm assuming he's going to follow it all the way through. He'll be coming in as a freshman. But you look at those guys, very young or just not very experienced. And Gatewood would have an opportunity to take over. You can't teach size. That was the Blake Bortles effect. You can't teach size. It's an intangible that you can't get around. And with that much of an opportunity, the sky's the limit. But I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous about 2022 in the fact of there's no real depth with experience there.
Does Gatewood make you a little less nervous?
I'll be honest, I'd have to see some of his action. I haven't. I've seen Navarro, I've seen Keene, I've seen Jones, I've seen them in action. I haven't seen anything on Gatewood yet. It's still very new. So I don't know if it makes me feel better. The fact that, he went to Auburn, had to deal with the problems that Gus Malzahn dealt with Auburn, with, the old money talking.
We got to play my kid next, okay? That's how we do it here in the South.
There's a reason why Gus Malzahn was so excited to come to UCF, because he doesn't have to deal with that.
Well, but the proof in that, think about this. There's coaches on this staff that was there. Obviously he knows him. So obviously he likes him to the point where he's bringing him in at Auburn. And then even when he went to Kentucky, the offensive coordinator at the time at Kentucky, who also handled the quarterback, Darren Henshaw,
UCF alum,
UCF analyst right now on the football staff. So clearly there's that's people that know him. It's not like this is like, hey, let's just take a shot. They know this kid, and they obviously still believe in this kid to the point where they're going to bring him in. And why not? He's tremendously athletic, talented. So there's nothing wrong with that, with giving another shot. I think what's clear is you're probably going to have, if again, and this is, by the way, Drew is the one that's telling everybody that Dylan's leaving, just for the record. So don't send the hate mail to me or Jeff, all right? Don't tweet at me, just tweet at Andrew there.
Stat Boy Drew on Twitter.
I own it. I'm willing to own this. I'm convinced he will leave at the end of the year.
I know. I just don't want people tweeting.
Drew welcomes the hate tweets. I know. He's not like the two of us there.
I live for it. It sustains me. I enjoy it way too much.
Oh, okay, very good.
You drink the tears of Twitter trolls in the morning.
Oh man, does that make me the Twitter troll?
Oh man. But so you bring another kid to be quarterback. And to back up your point, Drew, I'm looking at the quarterback potential for the NFL next year. Spencer Rattler right now is the number one guy, Oklahoma, redshirt sophomore, assuming he declares. You got Sam Howell, North Carolina, a lot of people like. Then it gets a little murky. You got the Slovis kid from USC that people like, but
there's a big drop after those two guys.
Right, you got
Rattler and
Malik Willis of Liberty, who's a redshirt senior. A lot of people like Matt Corral at Ole Miss. So there's room for a guy to have a monster year this year that could skyrocket here. And then there's always a quarterback that does that. Heck, Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles is the example. No one was talking Blake Bortles NFL draft until the 2013 season was ongoing. And by the time the South Carolina came around, all of a sudden you have Todd McShay saying, this guy could be a first round pick. And then he ended up being the third pick. So things could happen.
Don't forget. Let's throw a name out there that's going to drive some people absolutely nuts. Desmond Ridder. Don't forget him.
Right.
Come on.
Right.
Yeah.
We want to trigger some people.
Sure. No, you're fair. That's fair. So look, as a result. So if he does leave, you're going to have a young quarterback class in next year. Now, keep in mind, for all we know, the next starting quarterback might not even be still on this roster. They could always, with the transfer portal, you could always, if you don't feel good about what you have going into next year, they could always, if somebody becomes available that you didn't anticipate, they could always go that route as well. But again, they have a kid that they know. He's athletic. He's talented. I think he has a shot for the quarterback position. And if he doesn't get it, maybe they change positions. There's a win-win here. I think it's a win-win either way.
I agree. I think with his size, if quarterback falls through, tight end would be a perfect spot for him. He's athletic. We talked about his ability to run. That could be translated. Obviously, you have to learn to block, and we've seen quarterbacks trying to switch to tight end doesn't always work out. But I mean, you start this early, it may work.
I mean,
not hinting at anything.
You know what I was interested in is looking at this 2022 class is how few guys are. You don't have a lot of big dudes out there. And he strikes me. Obviously, the size is really something. But who are your like traditional? At least 6'3" guys, that we're talking about, like Rattler's 6'1". He's still pretty small. Matt Corral is 6'1". Malik Willis is 6 feet tall. Tyler Slough of Texas Tech is, or Tyler Shaw, I should say, is 6'5". That's your first really big one that you see out there. Jerkovich, the kid from Boston College, is 6'4", but a lot of small guys out there. Carson Strong in Nevada, 6'3", but that's about it.
Well, I mean, UCF does not have tall quarterbacks.
Dylan is 6'1" ish.
I mean, he's listed as 6 even on UCF's website.
Ritter's 6'4", by the way.
And we know schools tend to exaggerate a little bit on the height. So, I mean, you've got Gabriel at 6, Quadri at 6, Parker at 6, and then it goes down. Mikey Keene at 5'11". Andrew Brito at 5'9". I mean, this is just it's a small group.
There's no guy that like walks in the room where the scouts are like, whoa, okay, all right,
right. No, you're right. So, but one other thing on Gatewood, one of the things that's kind of hurt him in a little bit when he went to Auburn, the guy he was compared to was Cam Newton, who won the Heisman and the national title.
That's not fair.
I agree with you. It's not fair, but it tells you how highly he was touted. And I think that kind of hurt him a little bit. When I saw him, I thought more of a bigger, taller Nick Marshall, who led Auburn to the national title game in 2013 under Gus. And I think, again,
Nick Marshall with size.
Correct.
Nick Marshall wasn't a big guy.
Right. And I think Gatewood's the best runner in this quarterback room. Don't you, Drew? Like, I mean, I'm not sold on what's the running ability of the quarterbacks in this current roster. So
I think Parker Navarro is a great runner. The problem is he runs around like a chicken with his head cut off. I mean, that's what happened during the spring game. I mean, he ran some more, and never threw the ball away and ran.
Right.
But I mean, that's all stuff that can be taught. I mean, he's young. It's a new system. Okay, but there's definitely some legs there. But as far as both size and speed, I think he may be the only one who can have the complete package, and that's got to be an advantage going into 2022.
Yeah. Lest we forget though that Dylan Gabriel has some pretty good legs too. Remember who was also recruiting him? Army.
I was saying you're going to answer that question.
Yeah, but I'm not a, I know everybody.
Army doesn't run the air raid. Last I checked.
No, but
Army
I'm
just
not,
runs.
Right, they run. I'm just not as sold though on Dylan as far as a runner.
I mean, he's got this.
I think he's better than people think, and I don't think he was
deceptive.
given the opportunity to do that in the air raid.
We'll see. I mean, Desmond Ritter's the better runner, which is probably why more scouts look at him. And I know UCF fans don't agree with that, but that is the one thing Desmond Ritter a couple advantages he has over him is he's taller and he's more athletic. He can run. The big question with Desmond is throwing the football, especially with act down the field, and I think that's the big question with him in Cincinnati this year.
It's not even a question. Dylan is a way better passer.
No, he is, but I'm saying what I'm saying is what I'm saying is the questions that the scouts have about Ritter is can he throw the football? Whereas with I think Dylan is his size, and as you mentioned, whether he's a scheme quarterback,
kind of
system
a
quarterback.
Question that you have to answer about Ritter, by the way, So,
I think the scheme issue is the bigger question because we've seen 6 foot, maybe a little bit less size quarterbacks with good arms do pretty well in the NFL. It comes back to decision making and being able to run complex schemes, which are both very prevalent in the NFL.
And being able to read defense.
But you say that, but NFL teams will always go with a size quarterback. Look at your boy at Ohio State, Justin Fields. Why did he drop? Because quarterbacks like Trey Lance, who's taller, got picked before him.
And you know what? He still got picked. He still got picked high. And so far, despite a slight slow start, he at least shows that he's got some competency. Obviously, this is preseason. It's not worth the paper it's written on. But look at the.
Do you want to stop right there?
Well, I was going to say, look at the size quarterbacks who have failed.
The joke is that Justin Fields' first half is better than any Ohio State quarterback has had in the NFL ever. Since maybe Art Schlichter.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, maybe since Art Schlichter.
Art Schlichter is an expletive. I may have to bleep that out if you're an Ohio State fan.
I grew up an Ohio State fan. I'll take that.
So one last little bit of news that we did want to get to in terms of contract extensions. Congratulations to Emily Marin, UCF women's head golf coach. She also had her contract extended through the 2025 season. So that's so I think that wraps it up here for this.
Don't forget, everybody, check out our position previews for the UCF football season. Last 2 should be coming soon.
They're coming out tomorrow. Drew has been hard at work on those position by position previews. So do make sure you check those out.
I dread the last one.
Yeah.
Defensive backs.
And then
I dread that one.
Now, next week, we're going to be doing our traditional 5 biggest questions facing UCF football in 2021 previews. But going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to do it roundtable style. And we want you to submit the questions. So send them to us, your biggest questions facing UCF football this season. We're going to pick the 5 best ones. And each of us are going to answer them in an article on Black and Gold Banneret. So make sure you send your questions to us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. You can follow us individually, by the way, at StatBoyDrew, Jeff_Sharon, and Eric Lopez Elo. You can also follow us at Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. If you subscribe to our show, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Make sure you leave us a review and let us know how we're doing on your podcast platform of choice. And make sure you tell a UCF friend of yours about us who may be interested in hearing some UCF podcast content. If you're not a subscriber to us, no problem. You can fix that right now. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, or if you're an Android user, you can hit us up on Spotify or anywhere where you get your podcasts. This is a fun one. We can smell football season now, boys.
I can smell something.
Yeah. August, our next show will be our last show before we actually preview Boise State. So here we go. It's happening. It's happening right now. So
I'm excited. It's been a long road. Last season was rough for everybody involved. a lot of us, we couldn't be involved with.
I feel like we're all going to look back on the 2020 football season, like no matter what school you're from, we're all going to be looking back and it's just like, man, that happened. Really? Like, it's like the season that wasn't. Boy, the 30 for 30s that are going to come out of that is going to be really something. I'll tell you.
Oh, man.
But we're looking forward to having a full bounce house on September 2nd for the Boise State Broncos. And we'll be previewing that on the day before when our show comes out. And our show should be out that morning of September 2nd. But next week we'll have Scott Calabrese, UCF men's soccer, joining us to preview his team. So that'll do it for us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. For Andrew Glukov and Eric Lopez, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you again next week.